Hello and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about the story behind one of my favorite photos that I've ever taken. So I'm going to bring up the photo now. It's a picture of Waimea Canyon in Kauai in Hawaii. It's the smallest island and the oldest island in all of Hawaii. So the story of this photo actually begins on New Year's Eve in 2018. It was about 4 hours until midnight, and I had this crazy idea to buy my mom a last-minute plane ticket to Hawaii and for us to vacation there for a couple days. And up to that point, California was about as far as she had gone. So I thought it would be a great surprise on New Year's Eve to gift this plane ticket to my mom. Fast forward to 2 days later. We were both flying out to Hawaii. My mom was on one flight and I was on a different flight. And that's kind of where the story begins, because her flight made it out of Chicago just fine, had a layover in California, and made it all the way to Hawaii no problem. My flight, on the other hand, for whatever reason, didn't get off the ground and I was delayed. And I was delayed for a while, and then eventually they said, the flight is canceled, but we have a flight that you can take to Kauai. Now I thought this would just be fine, so I thought that I would land in Kauai, hop a puddle jumper to Honolulu, but that's not what happened. Basically, I got in too late, there were no flights available, and I was kind of stuck on Kauai for the foreseeable future. I of course went straight to find out if I could book a hotel, and the hotels were insanely expensive. So typically what I'll do if hotels are really expensive, or if I'm in a pinch, I'll rent a car and then sleep in the car. I've done this a bunch over the years in many different situations. I'm not ashamed to say it. I actually kind of love doing it. It feels like you're kind of on the edge of your seat the whole time. It feels risky, it feels crazy, and I kind of love that. Not only that, but wherever you park, the next morning, if you're strategic about it, you can basically have first dibs on whatever spot you want to photograph. So luckily I ended up finding a rental car and kind of meandered around the island a little bit. It was late already, so I found a quick bite to eat, had a beer, and then looked for a place where I could park the car and fall asleep for the next couple hours. I did some research before I went to bed and found out that there was this incredible canyon there that was known as the Grand Canyon of Hawaii. From the photos online, this place looked insane, and I knew that I had to go there before my flight out the next day to meet up with my mom in Honolulu. I knew that if I wanted to have the best possible shot of Waimea Canyon, I had to get there as early as possible. So I parked the car very close to it. I actually woke up when I woke up because the sun was glaring and I didn't really have a choice. So I quickly went straight into the canyon, found a place to park. I was the only one there, and I just waited and waited and waited and waited. And I actually kind of got there a little bit early because the sun hadn't really peaked yet. So I was just kind of shooting. There wasn't a lot of light. I didn't have a tripod. It absolutely reminded me of what Grand Canyon looks like, except for completely overgrown with greenery, and it was just absolutely stunning. I took a couple time lapses on my phone, and I shot a bunch of different angles, shot with a bunch of different lenses. I had my telephoto lens, I had a wide angle lens. I pretty much did everything, and I stayed there for about 2 or 3 hours just shooting my heart out, and it was absolutely gorgeous. I was actually able to drive around the perimeter of the canyon, and that's actually where this photo was taken. So when I look at this photo, I feel so many things. I feel frustrated because I know that my mother was all alone that night. Obviously it's not that big of a deal, but of course the plan was for me to be in Honolulu and I wasn't, and that was frustrating to me. I obviously was cooped up in a car the night before, so I was kind of like grungy, hadn't showered, but also I remember the excitement of the shot. Every once in a while, there are moments when you're photographing that you're in like flow state where all you can think of, all you can see, all you can breathe, all you can taste is what you're shooting. And this is exactly one of those moments. I remember seeing 2 hikers leave the area right before me. I remember seeing tiny little helicopters that were swooping into the canyon and giving tours that looked like tiny, tiny little like pinheads far, far away. I remember the fog that came over. I remember there was a waterfall to the left that it had to have been at least 100, 200 feet, and it was just flowing and you could barely hear the rushing water from far away. I remember feeling the really humid air and I remember seeing the river and following it with my finger. I remember the feeling of wanting to capture everything exactly as I was seeing it. And for me, shooting nature is one of the hardest things. I feel like it never looks as good in photos as it does in real life. And that's something that I struggle with all the time. And also on the other side of that, it's one of the most fun things for me to photograph because it is so insanely challenging for me, and I love that challenge. So I shot this photo about 2 years ago now, and I still hold it very dear to me. And it reminds me that no matter what happens, if there's a detour in my plans, I always try to make the best of it. That certainly was the case here. Obviously, I didn't follow the original plan of meeting up with my mother. I arrived a day late, which was not ideal, but it did allow me to see something that I wasn't going to see otherwise, and that I probably would not have seen ever if I wouldn't have been delayed. So it kind of reminds me to go with the flow, accept whatever happens, and try to make the best of every moment. Thank you so much for listening to my story and letting me talk about one of my favorite photos. And I hope that you are able to take something away from this. Please, if you like this video, give me a like, subscribe to this channel if you can. Also, if there's a photo that is extra special to you, let me know in the comments what the story is behind it and link to the photo so we can see it. I think that especially in this day and age, it's important to remember that photos have incredible value, not only as a society, but also to us personally. And I hope that this story reminds you that photos are not just something you scroll past and keep going, and oftentimes that there's a greater story to be told than what meets the eye. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.